Alright, hello. So a trend I saw going around was the idea to cut down the Smash roster to only the characters that matter, because we can't get all the fighters back again, and so what if there's a new Smash game? We'd have to cut some of them. So I've got this Red X here, and we're just gonna go through them, and I'm not gonna start from the beginning and go. I'm just gonna, when I see someone I think that needs to be cut, I'll cut them. So first off, I think it's safe to say that it's tough. I want to keep all of them, but Lucas has to go. I don't think I've ever met anyone that's a big fan of Lucas and Smash. Maybe they like the home game, but barely anyone's played Mother 3, and the moveset is basically just Ness. So, unfortunate cut, but I think we're gonna have to cut Lucas. Next up, I think it's the Miis. They were a fun thing to do, but Nintendo's kind of phasing out Miis, and if we really wanted to have Miis in the game, then we should just make a character to represent the Wii era of Mii-based games instead of having these guys. But yeah, cutting them. Next up is Pyron Mythra. Honestly, maybe some Xenoblade fans will get mad at me, but I've never really met anyone who's a fan of Xenoblade, and they just seem kind of, not to be presumptuous, but kind of Gooner bait characters, and I'm not a big fan of their designs. But yeah, I'm gonna have to cut them. Who's next? Because a lot of people I've seen will cut Sheik, for example. Where's Sheik? Sheik's front here somewhere, next to Zelda, right? There we go. Yeah, a lot of people cut Sheik, and I get it. But also Sheik just has a really cool design. And I know some people are pretty big fans of their moveset, so we're gonna put a pin in Sheik. Dark Samus, on the other hand, instant cut. Boss in one game, and I feel like we could do better. There's better representation for sure. On the topic of Echo Fighters, we might as well knock out Daisy, just because it would be cool if it was a moveset based off of the sports games, but she's not. She's just a palette swap, really. She's like Alf if Alf had a separate character slot, which, excuse me, unfortunate. But yeah, that's really all she amounts to. I think next up, Zero Suit Samus. Maybe she has some importance in the Metroid games, having her be in a skin-tight outfit, but it doesn't. I feel like all of her best appearances have been in the armor, and her in a suit like this just it was like a gimmick in Brawl, but it didn't really work outside of that, and it doesn't feel like she's really had many important appearances in the Zero Suit outfit. Next up we're gonna have Wii Fit. Yeah. Maybe there's some fringe Wii Fit fans out there, excuse me. But Wii Fit isn't really relevant anymore, and I don't think Wii Fit as a game has ever been relevant. So, yeah. Diddy Kong, obviously, it's because, I just feel like he hasn't been relevant anymore, is what I'm getting at. Sorry, it took me a second to formulate my thoughts, but, yeah, he's not in the new Mario Kart. He doesn't really have a big role in the new Donkey Kong game. I think they're just kind of phasing him out as a character. which is a bit of a shame. But yeah, we're cutting Diddy Kong. Really as simple as that. Then I think we're gonna cut Jigglypuff. You know, I think a lot of people like Jigglypuff, but it's really, excuse me, it's really just because Jigglypuff is in Smash, and she's Gen 1 Pokemon. Which is unfortunate, because, you know, while we're on the topic, he's like this first gen up here. A lot of people see him as sacred. I get their point. We're not seeing him as sacred. I'll cut him if we need to. Although I think a lot of them are gonna stay. I may be wrong though. We might get to the end of this and I may be wrong. But yeah, Jigglypuff getting cut. I feel like people only like her because she's Gen 1 and she's in Smash Bros. You know, on the topic of painful 64 cuts, I think we can rule out Fox. Or, no, because, you know, Fox is so integral to Smash's identity. It's a toughie, but I think we're gonna have to put a pin in him. Who else is there? Ice Climbers. Yeah, because people were excited when Ice Climbers came back, and it was fun. But I don't really think there's much point to having Ice Climbers be back a third time. I feel like people don't really care about Ice Climbers as a game. And as a character, I think the novelty is worn off on us. So, yeah, no Ice Climbers. Pichu also getting the axe. You know, I love Pichu. Pichu's my baby. I love Pichu as a Pokemon. But I have to acknowledge that that's specifically for me. And as much as I love seeing them back, I think I have to acknowledge the public consensus and say Pichu's getting cut. Who else is there? I think Isabelle. Well, we'll see. Who else? I think, you know, it's getting tough. It's getting tough for sure. I think we are gonna have to put the axe down on Sheik, though. You know, while I'm going through the easier cuts, Sheik is cool, but Sheik is kind of like Dark Samus, to where they had like the one appearance of importance, and that was it. And both of their roles in their games were quite small, so there's not really a point in having him around. Dr. Mario also, like, I've never seen anyone be like, oh, I love Dr. Mario. And I feel like Dr. Mario in Smash, like, anytime Sakurai's talked about making Dr. Mario or Dr. Mario in general, it's just been like, yeah, we needed to save time, which doesn't make for a good roster, you know? And, you know, speaking of saving time for, and shit like that, Young Link, also getting the cut. You know, if the moveset was kind of inspired by Majora's Mask, like maybe he used some of the masks, then, you know, maybe I'd think about keeping him, but he's just an Echo Fighter of Link. So, you know, giving him the cut, and while I'm at it, you know, we should get to some of these Fire Emblem characters. Robin, a lot of people hate Robin. I don't think anyone's gonna, like, even Fire Emblem fans don't like Robin in the game he's from. Same goes for Corrin. And, you know, Ike is just kind of like Roy and Marth, but a third time. And I've actually heard some Fire Emblem fans be like, why do they keep doing sword users? They should get, like, other weapons wielders. And, you know, I kind of agree. I think if there was a new Smash game, then, you know, maybe we can replace Ike with some kind of axe user from Fire Emblem, you know? If we were to have a new Fire Emblem rep. But, yeah, Ike's getting the cut. Another one getting the cut. Probably Violet, who was just a disappointment, let's be real. But yeah, you know, maybe people like Fire Emblem Three Houses. That's the game it's from, right? I think it is. But there's not really a point in keeping them around, I guess, because there's the alternate palettes. Because, like, I don't know, something I don't get is whenever they introduce the playable character from a Fire Emblem game, instead of, like, a character you can become friends with, because you're not going to get attached to the player character. You're going to get attached to, like, the side characters. That's why you play the video game. So, you know, I think there's also that, and I think that's going to factor into some of these. But yeah, Byleth's getting the cut. I think next up, you know, while we're in the Fighters Pass, Min Min too, like, ARMS, I think people expected it at first, but it wasn't really a character people wanted, it's just a character people expected. In the lineup of newcomers, and then whenever Min Min or like a ARMS rep didn't come, people like, alright, whatever. No one's really a fan of ARMS, so. But then Min Min did come in, and people were just like, why didn't this come earlier? Now it just feels like a waste of a slot. And I feel like keeping Min Min around anymore would definitely make her feel like a waste of a slot. But yeah, Min Min's getting the cut. While we're here, let's see here. I think Richter. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Richter. You know, Simon, people loved the inclusion of a Castlevania rep, and everyone kept saying Simon. But then they added Richter, and I feel like a lot of people's reactions were like, who's this guy? And like, you know, he's neat as like an Echo Fighter, but you know, there's not really much point to him. Echo Fighters in general, unless it's like a really requested character, don't really feel like they have a point. But yeah, Richter's getting the cut. Who else is there? I think Rob. I enjoy Rob as a character, but the robot from the 19 whatevers hasn't been relevant in years, and it was like a failed experiment, not even a successful one, in getting customers. So I think Rob gets the axe, and because, you know, Rob's most relevancy has been in Smash Bros. And fucking Mario Kart DS. And so, you know, not really much point in keeping him around. And while we're talking about irrelevant characters, I think we can go to, you know, I'm eyeballing Olimar, but, you know, there's a surprising amount of Pikmin fans, so I don't think I will. Just yet. I think Dark Pit. Because Icarus, you know, Kid Icarus Uprising has a cult following, and apparently it's pretty good. But I don't feel like it's relevant enough to get 2 slots. Sorry, 3 slots. I don't know why it has 3 slots. Maybe it's because Sakurai made it. Maybe some Sakurai bias, but I don't think it needs all those slots. But yeah, we're gonna cut Dark Pit. Same can be said... You know, Fox and Falco both have a lot of relevancy to Smash. I don't think Wolf has the same amount of relevancy in the way that these two do. Because these two defines, like, one of the entries in Smash Bros. Like, you think of Smash Bros. Melee, you think of Fox and Falco. It'd be a crime to... Maybe not a crime, but it'd be sad to see one of them go. Wolf is... You know, people got sad when Wolf was gone, but I don't know why. Because no one plays Star Fox. No one cares about Star Fox. And he's just kind of like a semi-Echo Fighter of Fox anyways. All of these three are, like, just the same character. Really, let's be real. But, like, a little different. And, you know, I think when we're talking about characters that are like similar but different, there's got to be a Toon Link too. You know, there's some really big Wind Waker heads, but you know, it's just Link, but again, and I feel like Zelda as a franchise has a lot of rep that's just Link, and I think we're gonna cut both the Links. You know, I feel like Link, Zelda, Ganondorf, that's still some good rep, and there can be new rep in this hypothetical new game, but I feel like the 3 Links and Sheik just is not cutting it, you know? So yeah, I'm gonna have to cut him. You know, I'm eyeballing Mr. Game & Watch, but everyone loves Mr. Game & Watch, so, you know, I'll keep an eye on him. You know, I was hesitant. Well, let's go to Palutena first. Let's cut Palutena. Another easy cut for the same reason Dark Pit is. Another one... You know, we're trying to just eliminate as many characters as possible. You know? Well, not as many, but, you know, all the ones that... We're trying to shave off the fat and make room for the new characters. And, you know, I think while we're doing that, you know, it's a toughie. It's a real toughie. You know, because I'm looking at the Fire Emblem characters. I'm looking at Little Mac. I'm looking at, you know, Piranha Plant even, or Duck Hunt, and I'm thinking, what are they bringing to the table? I'm trying to think who's the least bringing something to the table, you know? I think it's Little Mac. You know, I think it's an interesting idea to have someone so lopsided, but I don't think it works, and I don't think Little Mac is from a game that's relevant at all anymore for them to justify Little Mac's inclusion. You know, because you look at Donkey Kong, and Donkey Kong's just got a new game in the series, and you know, that can justify him being kind of meh in the gameplay department, but Little Mac has worse gameplay and has a less relevant game to his name. So, yeah, I'm gonna cut him. I think, you know, I don't know, I don't want to cut Snake yet. I think Snake stays, you know, because it was such a, same reason that Fox and Falco, except he has a like game that's relevant, Metal Gear Solid. Like, you know, Snake, I feel like has a pretty distinct identity, like in Smash Bros. He's had like an impact on Smash Bros. as a whole, so I don't want to cut him. But you know, if we keep going and the pickings get slim, then we might consider it. I don't want to though. Bayonetta, I think we can cut. Bayonetta isn't from a crazy popular game franchise, and I feel like she's a little too adult for the game, I'm gonna be honest. I don't know how she even got in here in the first place, but I digress. Cutting her. Also, I'm homophobic and she's bisexual, so... You know, on the topic of problematic stuff, Joker comes from a game where you can date your sister, I think. I've never played Persona, but I think we're gonna cut him on that pretense. Let's go back to cutting Fire Emblem characters. I feel like there's a lot of fat to trim. Lucina is a kind of relevant character to Fire Emblem, but I don't think, you know, she's just Marth, but again, like, kind of an Echo Fighter situation. I think, I've seen people like cut Roy but not Chrom because Chrom is a more relevant character. I think I'm gonna do the same because I haven't, I don't play Fire Emblem, but I hear Chrom is the more important one, so we'll cut Roy. There's a lot of Mario characters. We could do with cutting some Mario characters. Let's see here. I think our first cut on that will be Piranha Plant. It was a funny bit, Plant Gang, back when it first came out, but then it kind of wore off, and I feel like now that the joke is over, there's not really much point in having him around. Yoshi, I think, is getting cut because Yoshi hasn't really had much significance, because, it says that he's from Yoshi, but Yoshi hasn't really had a good game in a while. He had a, okay, Yarn World game type thing. I want to say, 5 years back, and that wasn't much at all. It barely stirred up anything. So Yoshi, I think we're cutting Yoshi on the pretense that his franchise, the franchise he represents, is kind of dead. And doesn't really have any, relevance, if that's the word. And, maybe we can, bring him back as an assist trophy. That'd be more fitting to his role in Mario, I think. Another hard, 64... another hard 64 one to get out of there, but I think it had to be done. Who else? We're really getting to the fan favorites. Well, except Steve. I think we can cut Steve on the idea that he's just fucking broken and no one likes him. And if we want to have Minecraft and Smash, we can keep the stage, because that's what Minecraft is really about, is the world and not the player. But I think everyone hates Steve. He's funny, but he kind of sucks, competitively, and people don't like that. So I think getting rid of him would be perfectly fine. No one's mad about that. Kazuya, same thing there, except I feel like his game isn't that impactful on gaming. I only ever heard of it through Smash Bros. By him getting in. Honestly, Terry too. I don't know why there's so many fighting game characters in here. You got Ryu, Ken, Terry, and Kazuya, and that's 4 slots to fighting games? This is a fighting game. We don't need, more than the essentials, Or at least that's what I think. And I feel like they don't play that similar. They mostly just have similar movement, but I digress. Who else? I think Game & Watch goes. It's sad to see him leave, but the Game & Watch hasn't been relevant in years, So I don't know if he really has a place in the modern day. I mean, I keep using this as an excuse for some of these, but the public knowledge of them is purely through Smash. And I think I've been using that as a crush to be like, oh, they should stay. But I don't know if that's a good thing, If Smash is all you have, then why are you in Smash, I think I'm going to be factoring that into my decisions more. If Smash is all you have, then you shouldn't be in it, because it's supposed to represent gaming as a whole. And if the representation of gaming is representing you because you have nothing else relevant or popular, then I don't know if you should be in Smash, you know? Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna be factoring that into my decisions. For sure. And I think under that pretense, we'll see about Fox, but Falco also gonna go. Yeah, just, I mean, it's the same character as Fox, like I said with Wolf, but like, also Smash is kind of all Falco. All Falco has. And you know, okay, so people are gonna hate me for this. But the same does apply to Captain Falcon. People love Captain Falcon. And he has, like, a game that people like on the GameCube. But when you think of Captain Falcon, you think of Smash Bros. And if Smash Bros is a game that represents gaming, it doesn't have sense to have video game characters that are only known through Smash Bros, you know? So I think we're gonna cut Captain Falcon. And you know, while we're there, Ness too. People only know him through, like, that one game theory. And, you know, if your only knowledge of Ness comes through Smash Bros. And that one game theory, that's not really good reason to have you in the game. I mean, it was coming to him. We got Lucas and Ness. Like, we got to Lucas, and I feel like Ness was inevitable. Kind of a sad cut, but it was one that had to happen. Lucario is another one. I think Lucario has more standing as a character on his own beyond just being a Smash Bros. Character, but I feel like when you think of Lucario, it's either like that one anime movie and Smash Bros, and that's not great. Same goes with fucking King K. Rool and Ridley. You think of King K. Rool and you think it's the guy who everyone wanted to be in Smash, and same goes for Ridley. So we're cutting them. They're painful cuts for sure, but like, again, that's all people know about them. If that's all people know about you, then what's the point, you know? I think some other cuts. You know, okay, Incineroar's a character barely has any fucking relevancy outside of Rule 34. Let's just cut him. Same can be said for Isabelle. Let's cut her. Okay, that's less true for Isabelle, but you know, I don't see many people talking about Isabelle as a character. They talk about Animal Crossing and like the towns they make, but they don't talk about the individual characters much. At least in my experience, people haven't been doing that, so we're cutting Isabelle. Unfortunate, but it has to happen. We're getting down to the more painful stuff. And I think it's... Actually, no. I don't want to cut Snake. I really don't want to. But, so I think we will... There's Pokemon that should be cut. You know, it's a high-grossing franchise, but it's kind of going downhill, I've been noticing. And, it has a lot of representation, and I feel like we don't need all that. So let's see. You got Pikachu, we've got Mewtwo. Those are stays. You know, we got Greninja. We got Pokemon Trainer. I think we're gonna cut Greninja. He won that one popularity contest, but I feel like no one talks about him anymore. It was very of that time. You know, he had his spotlight, and the spotlight's gone, and he just isn't really a Pokemon people talk about anymore. He was kind of a phase, if I'm being real. I don't see anyone talk about him anymore, so I don't think many people are gonna be sad he's gone. Pokemon Trainer. I think Hmm. No, I like these. I like these three. So, right now, I don't think we're gonna cut them. These are good Pokemon reps. I think it's all you need. But yeah. You know, on the flip side, I think some franchises that that are kind of not popular could get the cut. Oh, Duck Hunt Duo. I don't know how we didn't get to Duck Hunt Duo sooner. But yeah, you think of Duck Hunt Duo and you think that's no one cares about Duck Hunt Duo. They were like a package game for Mario, like Mario Bros, and that was it. So we're cutting Duck Hunt Duo. I think we're also, honestly, we're gonna cut Pit. I know Pit is like Sakurai's franchise, but I mean, we're making the game now. I am. In this hypothetical scenario, I'm director. So there's not really much point in having Sakurai's babies here if Sakurai isn't here. And you know, on that point, I think we can also cut Meta Knight. Just cut down the Kirby rep, because Kirby isn't really that popular, the franchise. It really isn't. And I feel like we can cut down on the rep now that Sakurai's out of the picture. That Sakurai bias gave Kirby a whole three characters of representation. I don't think it needs that. But yeah, I think now people are gonna hate me for this. People really are. Actually, no. We'll skip that one for now. Rosalina and Luma. You know, Galaxy came out forever ago. Rosalina is now just like a sports game title or a sports game character. She hasn't had like a place in a Mario game since like fucking 3D World forever ago. We can cut her. We don't need her in the game anymore. I think on a similar note, actually I don't know what I was gonna say. Forgot. You know, Final Fantasy is pretty popular, but I feel like it's not that popular, you know? I feel like it's kind of not that popular. It's got its fans for sure, but I think they're just a loud fan base. And I think with that in mind... No, because people love Sephiroth. People really love Sephiroth. Excuse me, I keep fucking up my words. But yeah, we'll keep the Final Fantasy. I think they're good inclusions, but I don't know, I'm eyeing them. Hero can also get a cut. You know, there's some Dragon Quest fans, but I don't think there's enough to justify a slot in Smash. And I feel like they're just kind of like a not well-made character in general, with their like whole gimmick being random RNG, and that's it. And just like, if you happen to hit a move and you're lucky, you get a crit, and like, yep, good mechanic, guys. I don't know, I feel like if we want Dragon Quest, excuse me, representation, we could put the Slime in. Slime is iconic. At least more iconic than the player character. Alright, so you know that character I was talking about earlier where I was like, you guys are gonna hate me for this. That was Simon. You know, because I don't know anyone who like actively plays Castlevania, and I don't think it's really had a relevant game in years. So I don't think anyone's gonna like... I don't think Castlevania is relevant anymore. Yeah, sorry to the Castlevania fans. You know, Mega Man is like a staple of the classic games, but I feel like we already have a lot of like classic gaming representation in like Mario and Donkey Kong and like Pikachu or fucking Pokemon Trainer or like Pac-Man, obviously, right there. We don't really need more, you know? And I feel like Mega Man can be cut under that pretense. Yeah. Unfortunate, but it's gotta happen. You know, I keep coming back to Snake, but I think, you know what? I know what's bothering me. He doesn't fit the style of Smash Bros. These are pretty stylized characters mostly, and then there's Snake, and it's just all off. It's very bright and colorful. He's gritty. It doesn't work. And people were like really happy to see him in, but I feel like it just doesn't match the brand of Nintendo or like of Smash Bros. So I think he's getting the axe. I'm sorry. I think in that same vein we can cut like Ken, not Ryu. Ryu is like Mr. Fighting Game, and having some fighting game rep in this game. Well, no, because this is just straight up a fighting game. Smash Bros. Is a representation of fighting games as a whole. We don't need like characters for it, I don't think, right? Yeah, no, we can cover you. Alright, I think it's about time we cut Fox. You know, it's sad, but I think Fox is really not relevant beyond Smash. And like I said, if Smash is all they have, then why are they here, you know? And I think Fox is the perfect example of that. Same with Captain Falcon. Just those two in tandem. If Smash is all you have, you shouldn't have it. It's hard to say. You know, to a lesser... Because there's King K. Rool, and I think King K. Rool, Smash is all he has. Banjo and Kazooie is kind of in a similar boat. I know there's people that enjoy their games. And, but mostly people talk about them because they were a long requested character in Smash. So I think under that similar pretense we can cut Banjo. Man, it's getting slim. It's getting slim. It's getting hard to cut characters. It's getting hard, for sure. You know, Inkling, I feel like Splatoon has really fallen off in popularity, because, you know, there's Splatoon 1, which is pretty popular, but I feel like with every new game, it's just become a little less popular. And I feel like that's just gonna keep going, really. So I think we're cutting Splatoon. You know, at the time it seemed like a no-brainer, but as time has gone on, it's just felt more and more like, why are they here? I think it's about time, because, you know, I'm looking at these and I'm like, these are all, well, I don't know, Sonic hasn't really been, we're looking to keep the heavy hitters, and if we're keeping the heavy hitters, then, Sonic is not one of them, for sure. Excuse me. Alright. Where were we? Yeah, cutting Sonic. Yeah, I think that's the right decision. We're looking to keep the real heavy hitters in this game, and I don't think Sonic's one of them. Same with Olimar, really. You know, if we're thinking of gaming, I don't think Olimar. I think Mario, I think Donkey Kong, I think, like, Final Fantasy. I kind of dogged on it earlier, but admittedly, it is a pretty, like, that's gaming, you know? Is it, though? I don't know, I think, you know, Xenoblade, for sure, is not. while we're cutting characters that really don't embody gaming as much, I think we can cut Xenoblade. And really, Fire Emblem in general. I feel like Fire Emblem, its identity, just in general, comes from Smash Bros. And it being all over Smash Bros. And also, like, that you can, like, have relationships with minors or something. And not... And that's it. But yeah, so I think we're cutting Fire Emblem, and because that's all I know about Fire Emblem. And I think if that's all I know about Fire Emblem, that says something about its representation, or its like its impact as a whole. Is if, and I don't know if that should represent game. You know, I love Kirby. I do. But it isn't really that popular, you know, because, you know, it's got its fans for sure. But I feel like most people who know Kirby, it's from Smash Bros. And if we're cutting characters who don't really have much to their name, I think we're definitely cutting DDD. You think of DDD and you think of Smash Bros. And it's like fucking crouch animation and shit like that. And, you know, he doesn't really have much of an identity beyond that, beyond Smash Bros. And I think that's a problem. So yeah, we're cutting him. Bowser Jr. I feel like Bowser Jr. just has had less and less relevancy with each new Mario game. After Sunshine and after the new Soup games, we can cut Bowser Jr. And we don't really need all that Mario representation. I think next. You know, I know people are gonna hate me for this. I know Sora won the ballot, but I don't know anyone who, like, well, I guess I do know some people that kind of like Kingdom Hearts, but I feel like Sora's fan, or like Kingdom Hearts fan base is just really loud. I don't know if Kingdom Hearts is really relevant enough to warrant a slot, but it did win the Fighters ballot. He did win the Fighters ballot, is the thing. I don't know if I want to... No, because here's the thing. Kingdom Hearts Legacy, as like a game, is so heavily influenced by the fact that it's like Disney properties in the game. That's its entire selling point. And that character shouldn't be in a game that's about gaming. If his game is about being a crossover with movies, it like defeats the purpose, you know? And you know, people are gonna get mad, but it's the truth of the matter, and I think Sora gets cut because of that. You know, I'm surprised a villager has been around this long. You know, Animal Crossing's great, but I think Animal Crossing hasn't really had relevancy since the pandemic. And I think after New Leaf, it really didn't have relevancy until the pandemic when its game came out. And then the pandemic, like halfway through the pandemic, people dropped it. And that's Animal Crossing. People don't really talk about it much. So I think Villager gets cut. I think on the topic of other cuts, I think... You know, I don't know if Final Fantasy is that popular. I don't think it is. And I think Cloud is perfectly fine on his own. I don't think we need Sephiroth. Because we're cutting down the roster to, like the bare essentials. And I don't think Sephiroth is a bare essential, you know? I don't think he is. And, yeah, so we're cutting Sephiroth. kind of disappointed. Or, sorry, there's probably some people disappointed. But I think it needs to happen. Because, you know, when we're thinking of characters that are like, should represent gaming, I'm trying to think of the characters here. Because that's like the bare essentials, is that they represent gaming as a whole. And they bring something new to the table. I mean, when you come to not bringing something new to the table, you can't get much more, like, obvious than Luigi. Literally started out as a palette swap of his brother. He's become something a little bit more, but, like, his neutral special is the same, except it doesn't have gravity, you know, shit like that. And, I mean, Mario has a lot of representation here. He's got, like, there's Mario, there's Donkey Kong, there's fucking, Bowser, there's Peach. That's a lot right there. And, I mean, you know, you think of Pac-Man, but, like, when is Pac-Man hasn't had a, like, popular game in years. There was the original and Miss Pac-Man, and that's it. And Miss Pac-Man isn't even, like, an Echo Fighter or a skin or anything, it's just Pac-Man here. I don't think Pac-Man really represents gaming anymore. I think that's, like, newer games. So yeah, we're cutting Pac-Man. I don't think there's many Pac-Man fans that'll be sad. I think it's just surprising, because no one else thought to do it. But it's true, it's the thing. You know, come to think of it, I don't know why Peach and Zelda are here. They're not really fighting characters. They don't, like... And you know, the woke liberals are gonna get mad at me for this, but they don't fight in their games. They are captured by the villains, and the heroes save them. And I feel like having them fight in this game is like some woke liberal nonsense to enforce their agenda about, like, feminism or whatever. But they're not fighters, is the thing. If you want them in the game, have them be, like, in the background of Bowser's stage, like, crying. And because they're captured in, like, a cage. But they shouldn't be fighting. They get captured by the bad guy. But yeah, cutting them. And, you know, if you want feminism, you have Samus, okay? You know what, fuck it. No, you don't get Samus. Well, Samus was just some woke liberal nonsense. It's a fucking bullshit. But yeah. You know, Cloud does turn in, like, dress up in drag in that one game, and I think under that pretense we can cut him. In Final Fantasy isn't that popular anyways, is the thing. Pokemon Trainer. You know, when you think of Pokemon, you think of Pokemon. You don't think of the guy you're playing as. It's like what I said about the playable characters. You don't want to... I don't know how much Pokemon Trainer represents Pokemon more than just a Pokemon does. So we can cut Pokemon Trainer. You know, I don't think... You know, because there was Breath of the Wild. And like Zelda's a very popular franchise, but I don't know how much Ganondorf has been like the villain, quote unquote, of Zelda games recently. You know, he's had his time in Spotlight where he's been the main villain. But I don't know how much of that is Ganondorf. It's usually been Ganon, especially lately. So I think we're cutting Ganondorf. And I, you know, if we want like a character that's the villain of Zelda, we can put Ganon in the game and not like Ganondorf. But yeah, cutting Ganon, Dwarf. Kirby isn't popular. Let's be real. I love Kirby, but Kirby isn't that popular. Come on. Same with WarioWare. God.
The
The fact I had
neglected
neglected to mention Wario
up until now,
it shows you how forgettable WarioWare is. If like I didn't even mention it until now. It feels like the kind of thing where Nintendo was like, hey, can you put Wario in the game in this specific outfit to promote WarioWare? And Sakurai was like, okay, fine. And now he's just in the roster because Wario technically is a popular character. But like he started out in the WarioWare outfit, and they were just like, we won't change him, I guess. It feels weird that he's representing WarioWare specifically. So we're gonna go. Mewtwo, you know, Pokemon, like I said, it's kind of falling off, and I feel like he could shoot. Excuse me. Sorry if we're having mic trouble. But I feel like if we are representing Pokemon, we don't really need more than Pikachu, right? I mean, like, that's the mascot. So yeah, cutting Mewtwo. You know, kind of in a similar vein to Wario, I don't know why we have Breath of the Wild Link specifically here instead of just regular Link. You know, Link in his like green garb, that's iconic. And this just isn't as iconic, and I feel like we can put him under that pretense, you know? It just doesn't feel like Link anymore, and therefore it's not really representing gaming. On the topic of like outdated looks. Like Donkey Kong in this look. After Bonanza, like this is completely irrelevant. We can just cut this from the game. Now we're getting to really painful cuts. You know, because we really want to keep something that represents gaming, and most of these represent gaming pretty damn well. Oh, here's an easy one. I'm really surprised I didn't get to this one sooner. But the question mark, it's not even a video game character. You know, why is it here? It just feels like a waste of a slot. Like we're here to represent gaming, and you thought it was a good idea to implement fucking punctuation from real life. People like to gas up Sakurai, but I don't know what the fuck he's doing in some cases. Alright, I'll say it. Pokemon isn't a very good game as a franchise, and I think it's especially been falling off. I think that we can cut its inclusion in Smash, and people won't get too mad. And you know, we can always reintroduce, like, we can always introduce new Pokemon if it like comes up in popularity again. But especially Gen 1 isn't a very good game. And I feel like we don't have to pretend that Gen 1 Pokemon are like the best ones. But yeah, we're cutting Pikachu. Now here are the really painful cuts, is the thing. I think it's gonna be the last cut of the video too. But Mario, yeah. People are gonna really mad at it because you think of him and you think it's Mr. Video Game. It's Mr. Video Game. But this isn't Mario. This is a very Sakurai biased Mario that you only ever see in fucking Mario Kart 8. And even then, that got changed out to like a happier Mario. This dude's fucking pissed. This isn't Mario. This is like Mariano. This is Maurice. Okay, this isn't Mario. And I think we can put him under that. But yeah, that's that's my attempt at cutting down the Smash Bros. Roster. You know, if you think I got any wrong, then feel free to let me know. But yeah, I think we really narrowed it down to who all needs to be in the game. And I think where we got it to is just beautiful. I think it's perfect. You know, me personally, this really speaks gaming. And feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments. But yeah, Bowser Drive.